I got attacked by a drunk guy at a grocery store. He broke my headphones, tried to fight me, and got arrested. But a year later, he was my cashier, completely changed, and told me how that night turned his life around. This happened about a year and a half ago. But something came up today that brought the whole experience rushing back. I don't usually post personal stories online, so I'm using a throwaway account for this. I have a strict rule about keeping personal things off my main account. But this story is worth sharing. It all started when I was at a local grocery chain, just trying to pick up something for dinner. The store's employees all wore tan slacks and branded denim blue button-down short-sleeved shirts. Now, I can't recall exactly what I was wearing that day, but I know for a fact that it was nowhere close to resembling their uniform. On top of that, I had a big pair of over-ear headphones on, blasting music at an irresponsibly loud volume. I was standing in the middle of an aisle, scanning the shelves for something that caught my eye, when suddenly, a disheveled young man positioned himself directly between me and the food. He reeked of alcohol, the strong stench mixing unpleasantly with an overpowering dose of body spray, the kind teenagers douse themselves in after gym class. I saw his lips moving but couldn't hear a word over my music, so I sighed, pulled my headphones down, and asked, "What?" He wasted no time, practically shouting, "Where's the beer?" It didn't take a genius to see that this guy was heavily intoxicated. His eyes were bloodshot, his posture wobbly, and his breath carried enough alcohol fumes to make me feel lightheaded just standing near him. I wanted to get out of this situation as quickly as possible, so I simply shrugged and said, "Sorry, dude, I dunno, I don't work here." With that, I pulled my headphones back on and turned to leave, assuming that was the end of it. I was wrong. Before I could take 2 steps, he grabbed my headphones, yanked them off my head, and threw them to the ground with enough force to make my stomach drop. Then, leaning in closer, his voice low and menacing, he repeated, "Where is the beer?" For a second, my brain was screaming at me to just turn and bolt. This guy was clearly drunk and getting increasingly aggressive. Running seemed like the smartest move, but instead, I did something incredibly stupid. Maybe it was the annoyance at having my headphones thrown, or maybe I just let my mouth run without thinking. Either way, before I could stop myself, I shot back. I said, "I don't work here, man. Besides, don't you think you've had enough?" That was all it took. His face twisted in anger, and before I could react, he swung at me. Now, in that moment, I had a few things going for me. First, he was drunk. His coordination wasn't exactly at its peak. Second, while I'm not the biggest guy around, just your average height and build, it's not like he was some kind of hulking giant. And third, and most importantly, I had been practicing martial arts for almost 20 years. I'm no world-class fighter, not by a long shot. I started training as a kid, and while I hadn't stepped foot in a dojo in about a decade, I still practiced at home to keep my form sharp and stay in shape. The moment his fist came toward me, muscle memory took over. Without even thinking, I redirected his momentum and sent him face first into the floor with a swift motion. It was my first time ever pulling off something like that in a real situation, and judging by the stunned expression on his face as he lay there, it was his first time experiencing it, too. He scrambled back onto his feet, staggering a little, and immediately started screaming about how he was going to sue me and have me arrested for assault. If he hadn't drawn attention before, he sure had now. A few other shoppers had gathered at the end of the aisle, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. I, on the other hand, was standing there with my heart pounding, still processing what had just happened. I noticed blood dripping from his nose. It looked like it had broken when he hit the floor. That's when a new wave of panic hit me. What if I actually got arrested for this? What if I had gone too far? Moments later, a store manager showed up, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. I attempted to explain, but the drunk guy kept yelling over me, pointing wildly and slurring accusations. Eventually, someone decided to call the cops, and we were both left waiting in the store for what felt like an eternity. When the police finally arrived, they separated us and started taking statements. Employees, other shoppers, and even the manager all recounted what they had seen. One officer went with the manager to review the store's security footage. The drunk guy kept ranting, throwing out threats, and swearing that I had attacked him unprovoked. I stood there quietly, trying to keep my nerves in check. It took a while, but eventually, the officer who had reviewed the footage came back, exchanged a few words with the others, and then just like that they put the drunk guy in handcuffs. Turns out, security footage doesn't lie. He was arrested for public intoxication and assault. I, on the other hand, was asked to give a statement, provide my phone number in case they needed to follow up, and was then free to go. I spent the next few weeks on edge, half expecting a call or some legal trouble to pop up, but nothing ever came of it. Eventually, I put the whole incident out of my mind. Until today. Today, I was back in that same grocery store, doing my weekly shopping. When I got to the register, I was greeted by a cashier I didn't recognize, but as soon as he saw me, his expression changed. He recognized me. It took me a second to place him, but then it clicked. It was him, the same guy, but he was different. He was clean-shaven, sober, and well-dressed. The disheveled, aggressive drunk from that night was gone. He hesitated for a moment before cautiously asking if I was who he thought I was. When I confirmed, he let out a deep breath and immediately launched into an apology. He told me that incident had been his rock bottom. He had been struggling with alcoholism for years, dropped out of college, and bounced between jobs because he couldn't keep himself together. But that night the arrest, it was the wake-up call he needed. He checked himself into rehab the very next day and joined a support program. Today, he was a year and a half sober. Not only that, but he had re-enrolled in community college, determined to turn his life around. I told him I was genuinely happy for him. It was amazing to see someone make such a turnaround. Then, quietly, I asked him how he had managed to get a job at this store, considering what had happened there. He gave me a small smile and said he wouldn't name names, but it helped that someone high up in corporate happened to be a sponsor. I left that store feeling something I hadn't expected: relief. Not just that things hadn't gone bad for me, but that he had actually found a way to rebuild his life. Life works in weird ways, and sometimes, the worst moments end up being the ones that push us towards something better.